Hey guys, Aaron McKenzie here from Originofenergy. Today I'm going to go through 5 steps that you can use to improve your pull-ups and your overhead pressing. The first step is to figure out what is limiting your ability. Now, for a lot of people it's mobility, so a simple test that you can do is the arm raise with your body against the wall. So you're going to stand with the back against the wall, raise the arms up. Now, if you feel your lower back arch away or your mid-back arch away, you have a restriction in the lats that's limiting that overhead ability. So ideally you can keep the ribs in, stabilize the spine doesn't move, and the shoulder blades will move around the rib cage and raise up into that overhead position. If you have neck pain that is chronic and keeps coming back, you have lower back pain or shoulder pain that keeps coming back, these can reflex into the muscles that allow for the range of motion. So if there's an instability there that's causing dysfunction, causing spasm, causing tension, then that needs to be addressed if you want to improve in your pull-ups and overhead press. Another simple thing to look at is your breathing. Now, do you breathe in your neck predominantly, or do you let the rib cage expand when you breathe? So for a lot of people, their rib cage is restricted, and that restriction doesn't allow for the shoulder blade to move smoothly as they reach up overhead. They don't have any extension there and they're stuck in flexion. And the same goes for their posture. So the way they're looking at screens all day with their head forward, whether it's on their phone or whether it's on a desktop or a laptop, that rounded posture is creating a restriction in the spine and the rib cage that isn't allowing for the optimal overhead position. Do you have an old injury that is causing muscular spasm as a protective posture? So for example, you've had a neck injury, you don't feel pain anymore, but it's tight in that area so the shoulder doesn't move effectively. Or an old shoulder injury, or an elbow injury, or even a lower back injury, all of these can affect the way that the shoulder moves. After you've figured out why you have a restriction or why there's a limitation, you need to start working on mobility. Now, the best tools for mobility are the massage ball and the foam roller, and you want to use them intelligently. So you want to go over those areas of restriction, not too aggressively to start with, and just see how your body responds. Once you've done it more, then you can increase the intensity to a 5 or even up to a 7 out of 10. There's no point going too hard, because if you push too hard on the restrictions, then the body will tighten up around them. But if you work at the right level and you build up to a 5 or even up to a 7 out of 10 in terms of discomfort, and you're promoting blood flow into the area and allowing that restriction to open, the body will accept the change. So you want to use both the foam roller and the massage ball. The foam roller works really well on the lats, so you can do active releases, you can find a restriction, then move the arm up overhead and allow for that muscle to be sandwiched between the roller and your ribs, so that way it moves and it pins it and it opens it up, promoting blood flow, promoting nutrition into that area and waste product removal. You can use the massage ball as well. It's very effective for getting in between the shoulder blades into those muscles there, as well as in the back of the shoulder blade into the rotator cuffs. You can also come around to the front of the shoulder, work into the anterior deltoid, into that pec minor, open up the chest. All of those areas are going to hold restriction if there's some pain in the joint or in the neck or in the ribs. So if you release that tissue, then you're going to find that there's a smoother movement. The next best tool for mobilizing is something to hang off. So ideally when you're starting, you can hang off something with the feet on the ground. The rings are great because you can put the feet on the ground, you can adjust it, and as you get better, you can raise them up. So you want to be able to relax in the position and develop that tissue tolerance in the grip, in the shoulder girdle, and then let the spine traction and open up and the segments separate. Now, over time, the connective tissue strength will improve and you'll be able to hang longer and allow the whole body weight to hang down. You can progress to one arm hangs so that way you can really get that nice tractioning effect. When you're in the dead hang, another tip is to raise the knees up. And you raise up through the hip flexors so that way it keeps the ribs in and you're moving through the hips, sticking the butt out so you really get this nice lat opening. Another great method to open up the lats is the butcher's block. Now this is gold. If you use this effectively, you can really improve your overhead position. Now the details is what makes this thing work. So if you see here, I'm holding the PVC with the grip wider than my elbows. Now you may not start in that position, but that's what you want to work towards because that's an externally rotated position in the shoulder. Then when you go down, you're going to pull those ribs in and curl the wrist back towards the shoulders and open up those triceps, the long head of the triceps, and open up those lats. Now it's really important that you don't let that arching occur. Just like the wall standing test, when you go into this position, it's a very heavy stretch. You've really got to hold a hollow position so that way you don't compensate in the spine. The next step is to stabilize the joints. Now, if you've opened those joints up with mobility work, it's very important that you activate them in the right way. So this shoulder band routine that I use in the classes here at the studio as well for myself before I'm doing pulling and pushing workouts is great. It turns on all the muscles in the shoulder girdle. So you're going from down the sides of the body, reaching up overhead, circling out, coming back down, circling in. Then doing straight arm pulls on different angles so that way you're opening up the chest but also activating the back and the posterior chain. Then doing some internal external rotation with the elbows out wide, and that way you can have that nice axle rod as you're going across and use that as a rotation pivot point. Then you turn around and you're going into the circles from the hips to overhead and reversing the circles coming down. This time you're going to activate all the anterior chain muscles and you're going to work all those muscles together with those straight arm presses. So from the side of the body, 45, out to the sides, up above 45 and straight up overhead. Then you're going to go into internal rotation and external rotation. Now these exercises are really good to do as an active warm-up, but they're also very effective to use at the end of a workout for postural endurance and stability work so that way you promote blood flow and allow for that longer duration contraction that keeps the shoulders stable. The next activation is the dislocate. Now doing this with the shoulders protracted, depressed, and then going to full protraction, protraction, elevation, elevation above the head, then retraction, retraction, and depression as you come down the back. It's very important when doing dislocates to disassociate the movement of the spine and the ribs from the shoulder blade moving over them. So you're trying to stabilize the spine, but feel those shoulder blades move around and over the rib cage. The next movement to stabilize the shoulders is the hang shrug. Now this is awesome for activating all those deep muscles and getting that control of the scapula. So you can start it with just straight hang shrugs, just getting depression of the scapula, and then you can do circular actions, forward, back, left, right, and that way you can feel all the muscles that you need to get that straight arm pull and really feel stable through there. Then you can move on to the plank to pike. Now this is a great exercise for feeling that serratus anterior push the shoulder blades around the rib cage from the horizontal position into that overhead position. The next step is to strengthen the pull-up and the overhead press through a full range of motion. Now for a lot of people it means taking a little bit of a step back and doing some very light overhead pulls. So I recommend starting out with the band so you can really feel the shoulder blades move through that full range of motion and reach right up overhead. So it's light enough that you can perform high reps, a lot of volume, get that blood flow and really promote that full range of motion. You can progress that to a one-arm band pull and double the band over or go on a heavier band. If you do have a cable system that's overhead or a lat pull down, these are really good for just feeling that full range of motion in a lighter load than a full pull-up. After that, you're going to go to the pull-up with the feet on the ground. So again, it's fairly light, but really try and feel that dead hang position and feel that when you come up to the top, you're really squeezing those lower traps and opening up that chest and contracting the back. After you've done the body weight pulls with the feet on the ground, then it's time to progress to some eccentric work. So you can start off with just a hold at the top, isometric, and then touch the toes down lightly and gradually come down. Once that's feeling comfortable, then you can go for the 7 to 10 second eccentric. Now usually once you can do 3 10-second eccentrics, you can do a good concentric rep, meaning that you can come back up. Now it's really important to feel the full range of motion, to come all the way down into that dead hang and use that strength in that position to pull out of the bottom when you're doing the rep coming up. After you've worked eccentric reps and you're feeling good with those, it's a good idea to switch into some band pull-ups. Now a lot of people bag out the band because it's helping them a lot when the band's stretched out, and when you come to the top of the pull-up, it's not helping as much because the band isn't as stretched. Now a simple fix for that is just to use the tuck position when you go down so the band stays at the same length. Now you can see here in the video I've got the band just off the ground, about 1 centimeter off, and holding that position through the pull-up. And I know how much help I'm getting from it because I can just test it with a dumbbell. So if I put a 10 kilo dumbbell on there, I can see it's floating there. So I know that that's helping me with 10 kilos of my body weight. And you can use that for any band, and even as the bands get older and they change their tension, you can still use the same test to figure out how much assistance you're getting. The combination of the assisted pull-ups with the band and the eccentric pull-ups will allow you to progress to full body weight pull-ups. Now if you can only do a couple of reps of the full body weight pull-up, it's a silly idea to just keep trying to repeat that every session. You want to use a combination of the low reps with the eccentric control, so you might come up for 1 or 2 reps and then come down as slow as you can, just to try and increase that time under tension so that you can get that extra rep. Now you might run that for 4 weeks and then you want to switch gears and go to high reps, high volume with the band, so that way you're promoting different tissue responses within the pull-up, so that way you're going to improve a lot faster. Now once you've got a decent amount of reps for the full body weight pull-up, then you can start to progress that, and you might work with higher reps or lower reps and change it up each month so that way you can keep developing. And the way to make it harder after you've got the full body weight pull-up is to add weight. And you might run that for a month and then come back to body weight, and then you might even come back to banded to do some really high reps. So for overhead pushing, I like the band press. Now the reason I like it is that when you press up overhead, if you're standing on it, you can really feel the alignment. You can feel the line of the band down the side of the body, and you can feel if you're arching or if there's a compensation somewhere. So it's a nice cue to allow for you to correct that handstand line. So I really encourage everyone when they're doing overhead pressing to finish in that handstand position and look up. Now a funny thing is, a lot of people do handstands, but they cannot with a light weight do a good overhead press. So what's that saying? It's saying that they can't actually do a good handstand and the alignment's not there. So it's a good idea to use this to prep for that overhead position, to really open up the shoulders and allow for nice recruitment through there, so that way the tissues there get very healthy and very strong. You can progress to the one arm press with the band, and that's going to challenge the shoulder a lot more and the stability through that shoulder joint. And you can also use the band for the press, much like the pull-up, by standing on it with the opposite foot, and as you press overhead, lunge down. Now the reason the lunge works well is because it's easy to keep that nice vertical torso. If you're using a squat, you'll tend to bend forward even if you're really flexible in the ankle. So that's a nice way to keep that tension at the same load as you press overhead. Now if you have access to dumbbells, you can start with dumbbells straight away. They're an awesome tool. It is very good to have a variety of progressive weights, so that way you can increase the loading over time as the stability and the strength comes up. So it's really about using the load, the weight of the dumbbell, to allow for the optimal rep range. So you might do some high reps to start with, get some volume, get a lot of blood flow, get those endurance fibers fired up so that your shoulders feel nice and stable. Then you can go into some more higher rep hypertrophy reps to build mass, and then go into those lower rep hypertrophy reps, then go into some heavier reps, and then you can progress to a heavier movement like a handstand push-up and get some eccentric reps. When you're starting your handstand push-ups, a really simple one to start with is the knee push-up and then stretching back into a nice lat stretch in a child's pose position. Now you can externally rotate so that way the lats are going to open up more, and really use the breath to really sink down into it and pull the ribs in. Your next step after that is to go into the knee push-up to the down dog with the legs straight. So you're stretching out those hamstrings and opening up the shoulders and strengthening the shoulders at the same time. After that, you can progress to a normal push-up into that down dog. And once that's feeling strong and you've got good control in that, you can hinge in the hip, you can open in the shoulder, and you can stabilize the rib cage. Then you can walk into the pike handstand push-up. Now this is a very challenging exercise, and you want to make sure that your forehead doesn't come down directly in between the hands. The forehead's going to come down in front of the hands. So there's a triangle support base. And then you're going to press up out of that into that overhead position and really shrug up overhead. Now to make that harder, you can go into a parallel piked handstand push-up, and that's going to allow you to go a lot deeper. Now I recommend people really exhaust these versions before they go to heavier handstand push-ups. I see a lot of people pressing overhead and arching their back, and it's more like they're trying to do a normal push-up but with a full-on arched back. And it's the same for their overhead pressing with dumbbells. If they're not strong enough or they don't have the mobility and they've got the brakes on while they're trying to accelerate, so those lats are fighting the press, then they'll lean back and they'll press up, and they're just putting all that pressure into their spines. So it's not ideal, and it's definitely not going to help you develop faster. Now this video is an overhead pulling and an overhead pushing video. And the reason is because these movements complement each other. If you want to improve that overhead press, just go down to the bottom of the pull-up and hang out there. And then use that full range of motion, and that's going to allow you to hit that nice handstand position. It's so simple. And if you just use this in your training, you will see and feel the benefits. Now, if you're looking at just in terms of the biomechanics, when you're going down into that position, you're allowing for cellular adaptation on both sides of the joint. So when you switch from the pull to the push, the body gets even recruitment on both sides. So you're getting that mirrored cellular adaptation. So the last step is to use the range of motion. Now when you're training, I encourage just training the overhead pull and the overhead push with volume and intensity 1 time per week. You can do it every day, just lightly, so doing hangs, dead hangs are great to do every day just to improve shoulder mobility and connective tissue strength. Handstands are great to do every day if you're feeling good in the neck and the shoulder and you've got good alignment, and you can just do basic handstand drills to improve your alignment. But when it comes to the heavy bent arm work, doing that once a week is more than enough, especially if you're doing horizontal pulling and pushing on another day and bent over rows or high pulls and dips on another day. You do not need to overkill the movement. You just need to get a nice stress response in the body so that your body adapts and it gets stronger. I hope you find those 5 steps helpful in developing your pull-up and your overhead press. Now it's really important to own where you're at right now. So a lot of people will emulate others, look on YouTube, look on Instagram and see these amazing physical specimens, and they look at those people and compare themselves, and they try to do things that are way too hard too soon. Just take your time and be honest with where you're at. Look at your form. Don't let your spine squirm when you do pull-ups or when you do overhead pressing. Stabilize your spine, look after it, because it's so important to feel good in your body for the rest of your life. So if you can feel good training and progress slowly over time, you'll keep progressing. If you get an injury, it's the fastest way to derail your training program. One thing to be aware of is if you are following people that have amazing physical ability, always consider that they have a long training history, that they've just got superior genetics, or they're using drugs. So don't buy into the supplements or the online training programs or the gym memberships or whatever it is that they're selling, thinking that that's going to get you the results. You have to do the work. You've got to put in the time, you've got to sleep well, you've got to eat well, you've got to hydrate your body, you've got to look after yourself. And that's what's going to give you the real long-term results. What you want to make sure is that you find a lifestyle that you enjoy, that you can maintain, that takes you in the direction of what you want to become. So get to work, guys, enjoy the process, and I'll see you next time.